Black Panther Party. No, the Black Panther Party. We're not violent. We are for self-defense and self-determination. The most violent group in this country are the police. What is taking place by the police department to black people across this country is ethnic cleansing and genocide. It is escalating to the day that the Barack Obama was inaugurated in 2008. We have a people who are only 13% of the population, yet we make up 80% of the prison. We have 50% unemployment rate in the black community. It's actually even more than that because they're not counting our people that are in the prison. The 13th Amendment says you cannot play the slave or get your service unless you commit a crime. The 14th Amendment forces our people to be subject of this government. We never had any say in that. We need our own nation.
Black power, black power, black power. You are tuned in to the new Black Panther Party broadcast network. We are coming to you live via YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Blog Talk Radio. This broadcast is a global broadcast being aired both on the Blog Talk Radio network as well as the other streaming sources in all of the continents on this planet. Of course, our most strongest listening audience is right here in the hills and snails of the United States of America. Yet we have a very strong listening base on the mother continent of Africa. I want to send a Black Power salute to everyone that's listening and watching this program. We also have people that are listening and watching in Central America, South America, Australia, Asia, and Europe. So indeed, this broadcast is international. It's global, as we are a global and international people. We are Black nationalists. We do believe and know that we are old and that we are the original inhabitants and heirs of this nation that we stand in, but also we the original inhabitants of the entire planet. And we all came from, I'm saying as melanated black people, from the mother continent of Africa. Well, speaking of Africa, we have a global comrade, a global freedom fighter by the name of Comrade Ramzu Yunus. Our brother is a human rights policy officer. In today's broadcast, he's going to address and do a political education on the right to asserting your rights of self-determination, our rights of self-determination. To some people, these may be new terminology. To some people, this may be a refresher class. But regardless if it's your first time or you are a vet to this, it would definitely be informative. I want to send a shout out to all the human rights policy officers that have been sending the positive comments here in our studio before we even got started. And that's very important. We want everybody that's listening to like, share, and to subscribe to our channel here if you're listening or watching via YouTube. Starting next week, which will be next month, this program will also be able to be rebroadcasted, and you can go back and watch it on Roku and Apple TV through the Dollar TV network. More information on that will be coming soon. But for now, you can always watch us here on YouTube. So with that being said, Comrade Ramzu Yunus, it is not only an honor, but it is indeed a privilege for us here in the new Black Panther Party to host you here on our show and we know you're going to bring the real information that's a remedy and a solution and the right options that our people need to be exercising. We are far more and have far more to bring to the table than many of us may know besides voting, you know. So with that being said, Comrade Ramzu, welcome to our show, Black Power, sir.
Yes, salute, Black Power. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for putting in the decades of work that you've been putting in as well, and others who are listening that are putting in work. I'm just glad to be here. It's an honor. Of course, I am on the mother continent now. I'm in Egypt as we speak. So pardon me if there's any network interruptions, but I pray it won't be. But anyway, I'm glad to be here. It's an honor.
It's actually an honor to have you, sir. So this topic, well, let's start off with is the title that you represent. What is a human rights policy officer, sir?
The human rights policy officer is really just a natural call. There's an organization that many of us are aware of called the United Nations, which is all nations coming together. It's not really a enforcing organization, it's just nations coming together and agreeing on human rights. They pass resolutions, etc. And one of the resolutions was just respecting the nature of individuals to protect themselves, to protect their human rights. In international law, there's something called a responsibility to protect, meaning protect human rights or from human rights violations. Number one responsibility is on the nation that you belong to. Your government should be making sure your human rights are protected. Number two, if that nation can't protect your human rights, that government or that government is the one violating human rights, and other nations should come to the rescue. But if all of that fails, the United Nations passed a resolution to acknowledge that individuals, groups, or organizations of society, they have a right themselves to protect themselves from human rights violations. And we know that Black people are being violated by our government. And we also know that our government is too powerful and it is a threat, or it frightens other governments from even coming to our rescue. So we have to answer our natural duty as individuals, groups, or organs of society to protect our own human rights, promote human rights, and protect us from ourselves from being violated. So as human rights policy officers, we just organize ourselves to be advocates for human rights, help our people to assert their human rights, and last but not least, to defend against any forcible denial of human rights. So it's just a natural call, but it's just an organized, natural call to protect ourselves and promote human rights.
Okay, so basically, I want you said something very key in the description. You said that the United Nations is not an enforcing agency. Many people are under that impression. They think, well, America's violating our human rights. We're going to go to the UN, and the UN is going to make the U.S. do what they need to do. Or America owes us reparations, so we just need to go to the UN, and the UN is going to make them pay us reparations.
Great point, sister. Great point.
Dispel this, and if you can, I mean,
no. Thanks for bringing that up, sis, because that's a lot of us are mistaken. A lot of time is wasted. A lot of resources are wasted. A lot of hope is wasted because we think the United Nations can do something about it. As we see right now, what's going on in Palestine, most of the nations of the United Nations are in disagreement. They don't agree. They're against what's going on, but they don't have an enforcement body, an enforcement mechanism to make sure that those violations are stopped. So us as Black people, United Nations is just a consensus organization. The nations coming together to say, look, we agree on these human rights. And we agree what's a violation of human rights. And we also agree that if any of us violate those human rights, other states that's part of this organization have a right to come against us. So they're agreeing on enforcement of human rights, but they don't have an enforcement wing at the United Nations. So they allow others to exercise what's called humanitarian intervention. That's why when you do see so-called peacekeeping missions, you see nations with their own military uniform on of that nation. They don't have a United Nations military uniform. They might put a hat on, so they say, look, we come in the name of the United Nations of international law. This is humanitarian intervention. But they don't come as the United Nations mechanism of enforcement. They don't have that. So they allow either nations themselves with their military force or any organization or an individual. They allow individuals themselves to make sure human rights are not being violated. So as Black people, we want to go to United Nations. Of course, we don't want to go against this big beast. We need some help, but we think we need some help. So we're going to go to United Nations, the big bad, the big organization. But United Nations, they will tell you themselves. Matter of fact, I should have mentioned this when you asked me what is a human rights policy officer. I was at the United Nations talking about help for Black people, and an ambassador told me, said, no, you have to enforce your own human rights, stand up for your own human rights. He said, but you need a force to enforce that. That's when I went and created the human rights policy officers. It was actually in New York at the United Nations, and an ambassador himself told me that they can't enforce anything against the United States. We have to try to assert our rights and stand up and enforce them ourselves. Wow. So it's a mistake. So like you said, it's a mistake and it's a waste of time. But I understand how people we fear, so we want to say at least we're doing something. We're going to United Nations, but it's going to not fall on deaf ears, but it's going to fall on ears that can't act on what they hear.
So in other words, just to be straight to the point, all the power truly. And somebody put that in the chat earlier. I'm not sure who it was. You know what? I think it's this gentleman here, Devin West. Mm-hmm. Only the people can free the people.
Yeah, exactly. Only the people. If you go back into history and look at all the liberation struggles, it was the United Nations acknowledged that their liberation struggle was right, was lawful, but they didn't help them, especially if it was against a superpower. They acknowledged that Ho Chi Minh in Vietnam was right in his struggle for liberation, which was asserting the right of self-determination, but they didn't help him. He had to fight for himself. All nations, whether it be Zimbabwe, they still had to fight. Whether it be Mau Mau in Kenya, whether it be South Americans, whether it be Asians, everywhere the people had to fight themselves, unless it was a small country and the government itself that was oppressing a certain group of people was in the interest. If it was in the interest of the United States, they would come in and help them and give them put some troops on the ground if need be. But in the case of the United States being a superpower, definitely no one is going to stand up. The power is ours to enforce that. You can't make somebody enjoy their rights. We have to stand up and try to assert our rights. You have a right to remain silent when the police stop you. When the police stop you, just remain silent. The United Nations is not going to come in and make you be silent. You have to be silent. That's your right. And if they try to make you talk, force you to talk, then they are violating your rights. So we have a right to things such as self-determination, which we will be speaking about in a few minutes. We have a right to that. So we have to assert that. We have a right to reparations. If they're not going to give it to us, we have a right to take those reparations.
Now let's just go back. Let's come back on that reparations part because, I think it was in 2010, was it? Or 2001, when the brothers and sisters went to Geneva for reparations. I believe it was maybe in 2000. They went to Durban. That is, they went to Durban.
I was there. I was a youth at the time. I was in the youth part of the conference. That was 2001.
2001. That's right. So, and the different declarations came out as it related to the U.S. Being guilty of crimes against humanity, and that the claims for reparations were found to be true. However, the U.S. walked out of that meeting. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. So you were there, and that was one of the first, and you're like, well, how can they do that? Well, how can they do that? And you just explained it, and I think it's very important. And then we're going to touch on this and keep touching on this because for some reason, and this is how we've been indoctrinated, people think someone else is going to save us. It's just like for some reason, we are under the illusion that we are free, yet we're still being governed and dominated and bullied by the same people that enslaved our ancestors. So what we want to do is knock down some of these false nomers. And as we are knocking down these false nomers, we are bringing solutions. we're never going to bring anyone on this broadcast that's going to expose the issue or talk about something without bringing forth a solution. So, with that being said, brother, you know, your theme, the topic that you chose, because our guests choose these topics. And again, this is political education. You know, we're not here to entertain, although it may be edutaining. We might have some points that are going to evoke your emotions, but we are determined to elevate our people mentally, spiritually, and physically. And with that being said, the asserting your rights of self-determination. What is that? I mean, let's unwrap that.
Good question. Well, I like what you just said. It's political education. We got to come with a solution. We got to come with some education. We got to have political science. I don't think anybody in here would go to a doctor that didn't go to school and get versed and educated in medical science. You'll be a fool to do that. You'll be a fool to go to any expert that you're paying for, especially if it's something critical. And that person does not have an education in the science of what you are going to get him or her to apply to you. So when we talk about political science, I think it was an Aristotle or Plato had a saying back then. It was he didn't agree with uneducated people, and it's still people today that feel that take that position. Educated people shouldn't vote. They shouldn't participate in politics. Because when you're voting, you are now either condemning yourselves or you're helping yourselves, your whole group of people, to a system that you just participated in voting for. So we are exercising political activism, political actions, even if it's just voting, without a knowledge of political science. So political science includes knowing options that's available. We don't even know any other option besides just to vote. So how can we actually, just like we consenting to a medical procedure, yet we cannot give an informed consent because we don't know the alternative. Informed consent means the person must know if there's an alternative to that procedure, what's the risk of that procedure, before they can make an informed decision. So we don't know anything about political science. We don't know anything about our rights, the power that we have, yet here we go participating in political events, like voting, for instance. Voting, first of all, is a big risk because voting puts your stamp of approval on that system. So now the whole world sees us voting. They say, okay, well, those black folks agree with that system that's oppressing them. So why we intervene in the first place? They're participating. They'll look at us also and say, well, they're participating. They're not trying to even implement an alternative system. But that's because we don't know that we have alternatives. So we need to know things like our most fundamental right that we have, and it's called the right of self-determination. We don't even know we have a right of self-determination. Usually I share a document, but I know we had limited time and I didn't want to go to bore the people, but we used to share a document on our conference called We the Peoples, the Strange Demise of Self-Determination. And that's why, like you just said, we have to educate the people, first of all, what self-determination is. Because usually, decades ago, whenever a revolutionary group of people stood up for change, it was based on self-determination. When Marcus Garvey organized in the 19-teens, it was based on self-determination, meaning having a nation of our own. With the Nation of Islam in 1930, July the 4th, was founded by Fard Muhammad. We declared independence in Detroit. Declaring independence is an act of self-determination. So It was founded upon self-determination. The Great Republic of New Africa, founded in 1968, was founded upon self-determination. But now here we go, got many organizations now. We don't even know what the right of self-determination is. We don't even know we have a right of self-determination to govern ourselves. So we continue to turn in purposeless circles. So our main job as human rights policy officers is to promote the number one human right, which is the right of self-determination, which the government, like the document I just mentioned, it was actually published by a scholar from Princeton University, a white scholar from Princeton University. He was explaining why oppressed people no longer talk about self-determination as a remedy. And he explains how the government would purposely make those people ignorant of the right of self-determination, and it will collaborate with what's called actually controlled opposition, which is leadership of the people to make sure they don't even go that route. They'll take them up down every other avenue besides the only guaranteed avenue that will free those people. And the only guarantee, and I say this and I stand on it because it's a fact, the only guaranteed avenue to stop oppression is asserting the right of self-determination. So we just want to explain to the people what the right of self-determination is and actually how do you assert the right of self-determination.
So we got a overview of what it means. And you said we definitely going to build more on it, but man, you brought up so many points, and no rush. I want everybody to understand, number one, that Ramzu, as he explained, he is in Egypt, and in about 30 or 40 minutes, he will take a brief break for 15 minutes for prayer, and he will come back. But we will be able to hear from another one of the comrades that is also a human rights policy officer. So keep that in mind. But other than that, you have no time restraints, brother. This show is slated from 7 to 9. We could go to 10 o'clock if you want. It doesn't matter. We are asserting our right of self-determination right here. And understand we are not corporately sponsored. You know what I'm saying? We don't take any money from the enemy. We are all self-funded here. And so this information is vital, and with that being said, let's unpack this voting. If you notice, when it's time to vote, why do they always focus on the Black community? Everybody just pay attention to this. No matter what city you're in, even if you look at national news, they're always concerned on the Black people voting. You don't see them off in white communities for the most part saying, y'all want to go vote? Or y'all voting? You never hardly see that. You might have some white candidates talking about vote for me, but there is a concerted effort to make sure that they're always showing and focusing on Black people. And it goes back to what the brother said. If we are still being subjects of the people that enslaved us, then are we free? If we're still being governed over, taught by, going to them to feed us, to giving us jobs, are we free? And if we are not free, how do we get free? I present to you, and I dare anyone to choose me to prove me different. And I invite you to prove me different, that we are still in captivity. Our communities are being patrolled by slave catchers, aka the police. Our means of basic human survival, water, lights, which are, by the way, naturally God-given things no one should actually charge you for. We turn around and go to a grocery store to get, which we could actually grow in our own yards. We turn around and go to someone, most of the time, not all the time, because we're not going to speak in absolutes. We turn around and go to somebody else to give us a job so that we can have a roof over our head, food in our belly, and pay these bills. But majority of the time, the people that we go to don't look like us. But do you see other nations doing that? Other races coming to Black people asking for jobs? Not for the most part. So this you mentioned also. You talked about how did you say it? Controlled opposition. Wow. That's unpacking a lot too.
Very important term. These things are critical if we are to win this revolution that we are engaged. We have to know who are controlled opposition. Controlled opposition, I think it was popularized by, Vladimir Lenin actually. He spoke on controlled opposition and how nations use controlled opposition. And he defined controlled opposition as anything that looks like it's opposing the government, the oppressor. It looks like it's opposing. It speaks against the oppressor. It even may have some marches, etc., against the oppressor, but they will never engage in actions to unseat the oppressor.
Right.
They will never engage in those actions. So they will attract those who are really sincere. They'll attract those. So now all of the sincere people are getting behind this opposition that appears to be against the government. And now they will be contained, controlled, because that leadership is controlled, whether it be directly in intentional collaboration with the government, or sometimes they're controlled by fear and first ignorance of not knowing what to do, or fear of doing what's necessary. So they would just continue to make noise and everybody will rally behind them. So it's controlled opposition. So many and the controlled opposition will actually get a lot of press from the government. They'll make sure this opposition is popular. They will make sure that this controlled opposition is seen by the people as the man, as the woman, as whoever, as the leadership, as the organization to go to. Because this organization is the toughest, it's the baddest. So everybody will flock to this organization only to be controlled. Their actions be limited to doing things that will not unseat that government. So that's controlled opposition. So be wary of controlled opposition. Okay.
I got a great example of that. I mean, we're gonna step on some toes. It's just your toes is right there on the floor. When we was on this lane. Okay. In Ferguson, when Mike Brown was murdered, this was the first time, and it was crazy to us. You know, there were many uprisings that had taken place, and and all of a sudden we start seeing these people walking around talking about hands up, don't shoot, hands up, don't shoot, and we was like, what the fuck? Hands up, don't shoot. That is this right here is a universal sign of surrender.
Yes, ma'am.
The universal signs of surrender. So how did you go from uprisings to hands up, don't shoot? And then we noticed that the people that was leading this were pink people and people who were of the what's the word? Of the persuasion, they wasn't heterosexual. We'll put it like that. They were not. They were homosexuals and they were white. The white homosexuals took the lead or came out in Ferguson and started talking about hands up, don't shoot. And then all of a sudden, there was this theme going out called Black Lives Matter. Then we start seeing people doing die-ins where they would literally lay on the ground. I'm like, what the world? So you can went from sitting in, which is as passive as you can do, to laying on the ground like you was dead. And we was like, no, this is, who's behind this? How are they getting this coverage left and right? Man. Every time we do a demonstration, they might give us a 1 second sound bite and they gonna distort half of that 1 second. But lo and behold, we found out George Soros.
There you go, sister. You just hit it over there. That's why we have to get this message out to the people and what the people can do and begin organizing them on what we can do in a situation like Ferguson. Ferguson could have been our first black nation right there. We had enough people mobilized to lawfully take over Ferguson, but we didn't know we had the ability to lawfully take over Ferguson. We thought we had to use our mobilization of the people to submit and beg them for mercy or beg them to start treating us better than they have been. We put hands up, don't shoot. They should have been the ones with their knees on the ground saying hands up, don't shoot. Because we had the right to shoot. We had a right to arrest them. That's our right of self-determination. That's why we are trying to educate the people upon that right. Matter of fact, one of the documents, the first one I wanted you to share was speaking about Ferguson. It was in light of the Ferguson protest, the one called Do African Americans Have the Right of Self-Determination? If you can bring it up
now.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now bear with me, brothers and sisters. Shouts out to Major TV. Brother Major has been schooling me on how to work this system here. So if I have a faux pas, don't blame it on me. Blame it on the TV. Can y'all see this?
I see something coming. There it is. There it is.
Do I need to make it bigger?
Maybe you need to make it bigger, I think.
Okay, let's see if I can make it a little bigger. I don't want to. Hold on 1 second.
There you go. I think that's it right there.
Is that big enough?
I can't. Maybe people can see it. I can, but I have it on my screen as well. So I'm just going to read a few things from it.
Okay.
Okay. Matter of fact, this was, if you look at the screen, brothers and sisters, I'm just sharing something that's written by, not by a black radical like myself or Comrade Crystal, but this is written by an American attorney, a doctor of law. Actually, is a white lady doctor of law. She's now like the vice president of some human rights law organization. But she wrote this in light of the Ferguson Protest. She wrote this in early March 2015. I'm going to read a few things from here right quick. She says, on August 9, 2014, Michael Brown, an African-American teenager, was killed by a white police officer. Brown's killing and the subsequent deaths of Eric Garner, Tamir Rice, and others ignited a firestorm in American society. Some feel that the American legal system is broken and thus cannot address the challenges that these events have raised. Others argue that the domestic system is working perfectly and that it has been designed to work against blacks and other minority groups. Boom, stop right there. That, like you mentioned earlier, we need political education. We need political science. And if you know political science, you will know that this domestic system is working perfectly. It's designed to work against black people because it's a white majority. And we will always suffer something called, any political science, if you go to a political science book or dictionary, you will see a term called tyranny of the majority. Tyranny, write that down, brothers and sisters. You need to look this one up. Tyranny of the majority. Even Wikipedia got a whole write-up on tyranny of the majority. It's defined as an inherent weakness of democracy or majority rules, in which the majority population will always get what it wants, even against the interests of the minority population. So it is akin to tyranny and oppression. So what they're saying in the political science that we follow, that we subscribe to, that black people, if you are a minority, you're always going to be oppressed because your interests and the interests of the majority are not the same, and the majority wins. So no one in their right mind, or people in their right mind, would choose to participate in a system where they are guaranteed to be oppressed, guaranteed to be under tyranny, because we are not the majority. I hope y'all understand this. So she's saying that this is an attorney, a doctor of law speaking. She wrote this because she wanted to give some advice to black people because she saw the marching, the mobilization behind Tamir Rice, behind Eric Garner, behind Michael Brown, right there in Ferguson, Missouri. She said, hold on now, based on my knowledge of history, one thing, history says that protest is not going to work. But also based on my knowledge of law, there's something that you can do. Let me read a couple more things. We're going to end this document. She writes in the next paragraph, if the domestic legal system is not seen as one that can effect change, one must ask, what other avenues are open to minorities in America? That's the purpose of human rights policy officers discussing and enlightening our people, making them aware of the right of self-determination. But that's the only option we have besides continuing to participate in this system, which we see it cannot effect positive change. We see that now. Even those who are going to vote this year, they know it's not going to do anything, but that's the only avenue they can go down, so they can continue to go down a dead-end street. So we're going to let you know what another avenue is. She says the same thing. This doctor of law says, one such option is the right to self-determination. Self-determination has been poetically described as the right of a people to decide their own destiny. That's poetic. That's the Kwanzaa definition. But more prosaically, it ensures a people's right to govern themselves or to participate in their own governance. Meaning she's saying those people who are marching for Mike Brown because of the death or assassination of Mike Brown, they didn't have to appeal to the system to correct that wrong or to give some justice for that wrong. They could have actually taken control and begin governing Ferguson, Missouri. And now we can get rid of the police. Now we can capture that police that did that assassination and deal with him justly. Bear with me. Now, at the end of this document, I'm going to read a couple of sentences from the last paragraph. This is a doctor of law, a white female doctor of law trying to advise black people on what they have a right to do besides the useless, ineffective protesting and marching. Now, it's good to do that because you're venting, you're showing, you're mobilizing your emotions against a grievance, but it's not effective. that same mobilization can be used to assert the right of self-determination. She writes this: the advantages of exercising the right have largely gone unexplored. I disagree with her. It haven't largely gone unexplored. It has gone completely unexplored. We never tried to assert this right. She says, but if one imagines the right being used by African American and Black communities in light of the Ferguson protests, one can see the right's enormous potential for change. So you gave me a good segue, Comrade Chris, when you talk about Ferguson. This is her talking about Ferguson. If we look at what happened,
what's crazy, Comrade? I didn't even read this document. You sent it to me. I hadn't read it. This is how the ancestors work, how divine order goes. Yeah. I'm just speaking from experience of what I witnessed. And the fact that you brought this up, go ahead, Comrade, as you were.
No, it's all in divine order. We're in the right time. We know we haven't explored this right yet, but now is the time. Everything happens in due time. It wasn't time for Ferguson. It wasn't time with George Floyd. When George Floyd, that was the biggest mobilization nationwide. What if we all knew we had a right of self-determination? We could have took over every last one of those cities, at least where the Black population was a majority. We could have took over those cities lawfully. It's not sedition. Some people get scared. Oh, you're going to get us in trouble. It's sedition. I saw a brother get on some sister's post the other day telling me, you're going to get us in trouble, Ramzu, talking about. That's sedition. It's not sedition. This is a lawyer sitting here giving you advice. When you're in trouble, who do you go to? If you got a little bit of money in your pocket, and if you're smart, you go to a lawyer. They can give you advice on what you can do. Here's a lawyer advising us on what we can do in light of things happening like George Floyd, in light of things happening like the assassination of Michael Brown. We can go beyond what we have been doing. Before we continue, right. We can go ahead and we can speak on that, Chris, if you want to say anything.
You wanted to continue that last part?
Oh,
I would like for you to finish your thought.
Okay. She says, well, that's all I wanted. And if one imagines the right being used by African Americans and Black communities in light of the Ferguson protests, one can see the right's enormous potential for change. So this is a doctor of law, a lawyer, an attorney giving us advice. That, look, if we utilize this right, it can change things. Why not use it if you have that right? We've tried everything else. We went down those avenues time and time and time, getting ready to go down that same avenue of voting for a president again. Had a Black president, nothing happened because that Black president represents a white majority. So he's going to be an oppressor. He's going to exercise tyranny as well. A Black vice president, because she even said it in the interview. I can't do anything for just Black people. No. Why she can't? Because she represents a white majority. She only can oppress Black people. Because that's what happens. That's what their political science says. Look it up. Tyranny of the majority. So you're always going to be oppressed. So here's a doctor of law advising us to do something different. You have a right of self-determination, Black people. Exercise that right.
Now, brother, you know, I want to talk about, I'm going to jump back in and we'll come back out about this voting thing. And I want to dive back into the assertion. Brothers and sisters, if somebody gives you who to pick from, you didn't choose. I'm going to repeat that. If someone else is giving you the choice of who to pick, you didn't pick. This is the type of political system that we're setting in. Did any of us pick Biden? Not really. We were told this is your option. Did any of us choose Trump? Not really. And when I'm saying really, because there are those who look like us who are working for, as you said, the tyranny of the majority. But if I'm only giving you two options out of 400 million people, you didn't choose. And not only that, when you do entertain this system and validating it, you're asserting that these people are have the right to vote over us, and I consented for this to happen. You know, so that keeps us in subjugation. I want to keep reiterating that point.
In some countries, Comrade Kristen, you know as well, some people will not vote. They just won't vote so they know that, so that the world knows that that government is not legitimate. So they won't vote. They said, no, we're not participating. We're not going to legitimize this election. But here we go. We keep validating it over and over again. Who gave them the right to come in somebody else's territory, take it over, enslave the people, then become the government of that country and have the same people that they enslaved, the same people that they conquered, participating and voting for their power structure? Who does that? And who will continue to legitimate a system like that? The system is not legitimate in the first place. I don't care if it's Trump, Obama, Biden. I don't care if it's Cornel West. I don't care if Malcolm X came from the grave. I wouldn't vote for Malcolm X if he ran for the government of this system. And Malcolm X wouldn't even run for the government of this system. Dr. King wouldn't run. He wouldn't participate in the same government that killed him. So why are we legitimizing? And they admitted they killed Dr. King. They just now admitted they killed Malcolm X. So if you love Dr. King, if you love Malcolm X, why are you participating in a government that killed them? Admitted that they killed them.
In fact, Malcolm X said, I'm not a Republican. What did Malcolm X say? He said, I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. He said, I'm a black victim of the Democrats. I'm a black victim of the Republicans and got sense enough to know it. That's what he said. So, brother, we're talking about, look like your screen is frozen. I guess you had the internet on fire. You back. It was only for a second. But you know, you hit it. Man, I don't know if I can catch up with these comments. I got 22 comments in the background. You know, we got a strong participation, but I want everyone to understand that, you know, we do recognize and we want to make sure that the people are participate and have something to say. But, you know, I also want to make sure that what the brother is saying is landing. And I know it is, because, you know, Ray Charles is dead and blind and dead. He can see what we're saying and know what we're saying is the truth. Indeed. Brother, so let's get back to this. I guess this goes back to another terminology you brought up. You said informed consent. And we were alluding to it, what we were just talking about right now, but informed consent. We recently witnessed that on a more extremely aggressive global scale when this pandemic was unleashed on the people. And people were told, you know, either you take this poison in your arm or you don't have a job. Either you take this poison in your arm or you can't come to school here. Either you take this poison and let us shoot it into your children's arms, or they come to school. But not telling you any of the side effects. Not telling you the origin. Not letting you know that you have the right to deny someone putting a foreign substance into you. So when folks started dying and having all kind of side effects, they never had conformed consent. They were forced under duress. Under duress, key word, key terminology. Under duress, sister. And that's another reason why we have to assert our right of self-determination. Look at the crime they just committed. Look at the crime they just committed. Now, even they having hearings where even congressmen and congresswomen are taking Fauci and that group to task for what they've done. So look, you knew, and what's the vaccine country, Pfizer and all those, you know there were side effects. They had to petition the court in order to release the fact that they knew there were thousands of side effects, but they forced the people into taking the vaccine without informed consent. They didn't know what the risks were. They didn't even know if there were any alternatives to it. They said, no, this is the choice to take for it. President sit there and lied and said it will no side effects. The president, there's no side effects and it will get rid of the virus. Now they got people taking booster after booster after booster. That alone should have had us, especially us in the conscious community, in an uproar. Look at our people whose lives have been destroyed because of that vaccine. Yet we sit there and all we did was scream out against it. Now we have to assert our right of self-determination so that such things can't happen. We have the power over our community. We have the power to decide who can go to school, who can have a job or not. We control the economy. So you can't tell me I can't benefit from the economy if I don't take this shot. But if you don't have self-determination, somebody else is pulling the strings. They can force you. They can force you. And like Biden said, well, let's keep it legal and let's just
use our power to kind of force the people into doing it by threatening their jobs. And the American government gave concessions to these companies to make sure their workers were forced into taking that. Brothers and sisters, we have to have a right. We have to assert our right of self-determination, or we are condemned to death.
Right. Now, what do you say?
I said, what's left for us to do? What's left for us to do? We've done enough complaining. We're on Facebook daily complaining. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We're doing this daily. We got to take some concentrated action, some concrete action and say, look, this is what we're going to do to escape this. If you are a revolutionary, now, like Dr. King said in his meeting in Frogmore, South Carolina in 1967, and nobody knows about, it was just a strategy meeting. He said, well, he conceded that he conceded to Malcolm X, actually. He said, look, we got to leave this civil rights struggle alone and deal with human rights. He said, we have to leave reform. We can't reform this. Look it up. It's a transcript on Dr. King's meeting in Frogmore, South Carolina in 1967. He said, we were seeking to reform this nation because it wasn't living up to the rules that it has prescribed. He said, then after Selma and the Voting Rights Bill, we moved into a new era, which must be an era of revolution. I think we must see the great distinction between a reform movement and a revolutionary movement. Now, that's Dr. King's words. He was a revolution. He became a revolutionary. Then they assassinated the revolutionary some months later. But now we're at that point, too. We got to make a distinction. Are you a reformist trying to reform something that can't be reformed? If you are that, stop wasting our time. Get out my face. Go do your business. I ain't dealing with you.
Right.
Now, are you a revolutionary that wanted to change? Now, Dr. King wasn't talking about bloody revolution, but he was talking about revolution. He's talking about a nonviolent revolution. But a nonviolent revolution means black power. It means taking power, which we lawfully can do via our right of self-determination. So do we want our own power where we can change the situation ourselves, or we're going to try to keep on trying to reform the devil? Who's going to be stupid enough to keep, in 2024, they even calling phones smart. They call these phones smart. Now we still being dumb, doing the same thing over and over again. We got to do something different, brothers and sisters. And the only thing we haven't done is the right of self-determination. We've been trying to reform this thing. Now it's time for revolution. We're trying a nonviolent revolution. But actually, if they try to deny us our right of self-determination, we do have a right to get violent, just like they're admitting that the Palestinians have a right to slaughter those Israelis. They just say, nah, let's not slaughter the settlers. But ain't no such thing that's another story. Ain't no such thing as a peaceful settler. They on stolen territory. But they admitting, lawful organizations are admitting those Palestinians have a right to defend their self-determination. So we have a right to do it as well. But first of all, we got to know we have a right of self-determination. How do we assert this right of self-determination? What do we do?
Now let me ask you, brother, can you give us an example where people have asserted the right of self-determination?
There's probably almost about 160 examples around the world that people asserted their right of self-determination. First of all, the first country that gave America a loss in war, called Vietnam, they did it based on the right of self-determination. Ho Chi Minh was a young man in Paris in 1918, 1919, when Woodrow Wilson was in Paris. They had the peace conferences then, talking about the world war that was going on. Woodrow Wilson said, look, people have a right of self-determination. If we respect that self-determination, then the wars can end. Everybody can govern themselves. So Ho Chi Minh said, whoa, everybody have a right of self-determination. I never heard this. And here's a superpower talking about it. So let me go and organize behind the right of self-determination. So he went back and engaged in a struggle for self-determination, and eventually Vietnam was won. Now we have a war going on, or it's called so-called war, between Ukraine and Russia. Ukraine declared their independence in 1990, or was it 91? And they said, look, if you read the Declaration of Independence, it's only like 3 words, 3 sentences. They said, based on our right of self-determination, because they have a right to govern themselves. So they asserted their self-determination and began governing themselves. They held a vote to validate that the people wanted to govern themselves. And recently, on the North American continent, down in Mexico, there was a number of municipalities. They came together and said, look, Mexico is in agreement. Mexico ratified the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Mexico included in their laws the right of self-determination. So those group of Afro-descendant Mexicans, they were Afro-descendant Mexicans, they came together and said, look, forget these regular Mexicans. We have a right of self-determination. So we're going to govern ourselves. So they created their own independent municipality of about 9 of them together, came together and created one. They just stood up and asserted it. All these nations, before self-determination was promoted by Woodrow Wilson, it was started being promoted by the Russian leadership. And Woodrow Wilson was advised to take charge of that promotion. So before he started promoting it, there was only about 40 countries. Only about 40 countries. After oppressed people started learning about this right of self-determination that Woodrow Wilson was promoting, now we have about 200 countries. All the other oppressed people began revolutions for their right of self-determination. Like Malcolm X said, a revolution is based on land, controlling land. That's the right of self-determination. So all peoples, all free nations, all the nations of Africa look back at their struggle and they use the term self-determination. They asserted their right to govern themselves because the government over them was not legitimate. So there's many examples. There's almost 160 examples of self-determination or more.
What about in Africa? You know, in Africa, do we have some as it relates to
every country in Africa is an example of self-determination?
Go ahead, sir.
Every country in Africa, whether it be Zimbabwe, they was colonized by the British. As many of them were colonized by the British. All of them, Kenya, Ghana. If you look back at their documents, they use the word self-determination because now the international community, including the colonizers, were acknowledging the right of self-determination. So if you acknowledge that people have a right to govern themselves, then why y'all colonizing us? So we assert that right then. That's why when if you go back in time in 1918, around 1918, 1920, when Woodrow Wilson was promoting self-determination, but he was doing it only to Europeans. But his Secretary of State, Robert Lansing, said, hold on, Mr. President, that phrase is loaded with dynamite. What misery it will cause. It will bring calamity to us because now you're talking about self-determination for white folks. What if the people that we oppress utilize their right of self-determination? It's loaded with dynamite. So don't you want to use dynamite? I think everybody on this call want to throw some dynamite at this system and blow it up. Well, that's our right of self-determination. Once you assert that right, they have no more authority over you. It's destroyed. That's why Elijah Muhammad also said our unity is like an atomic bomb. But our unity in which way? Our unity in calling ourselves the same name, our unity in joining the same religion, our unity in attending a march together. That kind of unity is not going to get anything, but symbolic emotionalism. Unity is used on every continent, including the United States, when you vote. That's the most united action and powerful action people can take is to assert their political will. So black people, our unity is in asserting our political will by having our own vote, saying, look, we vote for black independence. And the law dictates that we can do that. Even the United States government admits that we can hold our own vote. Matter of fact, I want to share this document right quick. The one called U.S. Policy Toward National Self-Determination Movement. This is what the United States government says concerning self-determination. I want to read a few words from the chair. This is the government meeting, a bunch of congressmen in the Senate subcommittee or committee having this hearing on self-determination.
Which one is U.S. policy?
Yeah, U.S. policy. Yes, there it is.
I'm here. Okay.
U.S. policy toward national self-determination movement. I just want to scroll down till we first start seeing those words highlighted. I think it might.
This was in
2016. They had a congressman had a Senate committee, a hearing, the U.S. government in 2016, not in 1776, brothers and sisters. That's when they asserted their right in 1776. Now here they go, hundreds of years later, having a hearing about self-determination. You scroll down to, I think it might be page.
This highlighted part?
Let me see the highlights. Yeah, highlight part. I think page 5 on digitally. I don't know what actual page it is.
It's page 5 on.
Okay. He says, I'm going to skip down part of that. He says, as advocates of democratic government and human rights, this is the government, this is a congressman, this is the chairman, a 29-year, 30-year congressman saying these words, a chairman of this hearing on self-determination. As advocates of democratic government and human rights, we cannot help but have sympathy with the grievances of many of these self-determination movements. They are often based on legitimate complaints and aspire to change a political structure that they quite often had no voice in creating. Justification number one, right there, brothers and sisters. Did you or did you not have a voice in creating this political system? I'm not talking about advising them. I'm talking about, did you have a voice and was it for you? Did any of us have any ancestors besides rapists sitting at that table framing the government of the United States? Any of us on it? I think not. Any listeners? I think not. So we have a legitimate reason for a certain self-determination because we didn't choose this system. It wasn't determined by ourselves. Self-determination is the word, brothers and sisters. This system was not determined by ourselves. It was determined by white selves. Bear with me. Go down to the next page, beginning of the next page. He says, what is wrong with new states? He says nothing wrong with new states. What is wrong with changing borders that have been created by monarchs back 2 centuries ago? And after all, our country is a product of the self-determination movement. Now, here's the government of the United States. Here's the chairman, a 30-year congressman saying, look, you all, we have been acting unfairly against self-determination movements if it's against our interests. But really, we don't have no legal justification or moral justification for being against a self-determination movement because we are ourselves a product of self-determination. When you declare independence, that's the number one act of self-determination, declaring independent political control of your territory where you live at. So he said, look, we're a product of that. We definitely can't deny it because that's how our country was created. Now skip down to, I think around page, digitally, it might be about, 42. Let me see. Page 42. I'm going to just close out with this. Close this document out with his words here. No, it's not page 42. It's 40. No, it's 44 digitally. It's 44. But on the document, it says page 40. I don't know if you let me. Next page. Bam. Now, here's the congressman talking about how you assert the right of self-determination. He's saying how everybody in America has a right of self-determination. Wherever they are, they can assert that right of self-determination. I'm going to skip. He's going to give an example of Mexicans living in San Diego. He says that if the majority of people in San Diego end up being people who would prefer that they live in Mexico, I'm sorry. They have a right to vote on it, and it's adios, San Diego. Here's a 29, 30-year congressman, senior congressman speaking at a hearing on self-determination. He's given an example on how self-determination can be asserted. He said the people, if you read international law, there are numerous ways of asserting the right of self-determination. Number one, it says the people can form their own independent state or nation. Number two, the people can integrate with another independent state, meaning they can say, okay, we don't want to form our own. We rather integrate with another nation like Mexico, China, Ghana, whatever nation you choose, if they would accept you. So this congressman is saying that the people in San Diego want to become.
Oh, man.
It's that simple. If we want to say adios, if you in Ferguson, you was in Ferguson, you want to say adios to the Ferguson racist government and police and the United States or even the Missouri government, you have a right to hold a vote right there in Ferguson. And it's adios. Now we control Ferguson. Now put your hands up, police, and say don't shoot. And pray we don't shoot you, because one of you going to get shot definitely. When we were in Baltimore for Freddie Gray, we had a right to take over Baltimore. We had just have a vote. All those people out there in Baltimore who could have had their vote. Y'all would have controlled Baltimore. I'm sure every black person would have said yes. I'm sure every black person in Detroit, we had a vote in Detroit. They said yes, but nobody was there to help validate what we were doing. But that's another story. All the people in Detroit have to say is, yes, we want to control Detroit. Yes, we want these hundreds of thousands of empty properties to be given to ourselves for free. Yes, we want to leverage this $600 billion of assets, of real estate assets in Detroit, and cut everybody a reparations check. Yes, we want to do that. And all over America, we do the same thing, whether you're in Atlanta, whether you're in Detroit, whether you're in Baltimore, whether you're in Mayberry, you have a right to have a vote. And now you control that city. You control the assets. Now you control putting together your own police force. And with that $15 trillion of real estate assets alone where black people live. $15 trillion, Comrade Crystal. That's a lot for us to cut everybody a check. If you look at reparations as a check. So why do we do that? But I'm sure if people knew that they had a right to do that, you would vote yes. So here is the American government saying, look, black people, any people, if you want to say adios to the system, if you want to control your territory yourselves, you have a right to vote on it, and it's adios. So that's as simple as it can get, Comrade Crystal. This is not Malcolm X speaking. This is not Martin Luther King speaking. This is not Comrade Crystal speaking. This is not Ramzu speaking. This is the American government saying, look, black people, if you feel oppressed, you want to say adios to oppression, then hold the vote, and you control it yourself.
And you know something, Ramzu? Basically, if we just cut to the chase, basically, even though it's framed as international law or human rights law or self-determination law, what this is inalienable rights. These are God-given rights.
God-given rights.
And we've been, schooled and taught, this is the law and you must follow this and this is the way it must be. But to have individuals such as yourself and other comrades present a total different paradigm, this is what's needed. I mentioned this last night when we had Abdul Halim Muhammad on the show. We are living in a time of paradigm shifts. And we are going to be the paradigm shifters on our watch. In the 1860s, a paradigm shift took place. Which you start having Nat Turners and all these rebellions taking place across the United States of America, not just in Virginia, but in Louisiana, everywhere. That was asserting the right of self-determination.
Comrade.
Then let's come on back 100 years later. Our people, with their understanding of what should be done, they wanted civil rights. And they started getting out and fighting for civil rights, regardless of what our take may be of what the outcome was with integration. But that was, again, another example of certain. But now, brothers and sisters, and I'm gonna keep saying this. I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it. Now it's on our watch, brother. Is that screen still up?
Yeah, it's still up. But I want you to. You just said something. You didn't read none of these documents that I sent you to share. You didn't read none of them, but you keep mentioning. You saying it. What you saying? What the documents are saying? Because it's just a universal fact.
Wow.
Comrade Christian just said this is a paradigm shift. This is a paradigm shift, right? This next document is a conference that Black Doctors of Law had at Hamlin University Law School. It's a conference on self-determination.
Oh, okay.
The main thing that they said, Comrade Crystal, in this document is that this is a paradigm shift.
What page?
that we have to shift paradigm. Bear with me. Scroll down. If you look at the title of it, this is a group of doctors of law, not revolutionaries. It's not a conference of me and Crystal and the Nation of Islam or any other so-called radical group. This is a conference of doctors of law. They met at Hamlin University School of Law in 1993. Look at that date now, 1993. They had it in 1993 for a reason, early 1993. But it's called the Proceedings of the Conference on African Americans and the Right to Self-Determination. Listen what they say. What do they say about paradigm? These are doctors of law now, a whole bunch of doctors of law, judges, attorneys, professors of law. One of them is even the Attorney General of Minnesota. I know Crystal know him. His name is Keith Ellison. He used to be in the Nation of Islam at one time. Listen, I want to read a couple of things right here. Go to this first page, Comrade Crystal. Digitally, they say 3. Historically, this is what they write. Historically, the rights of African Americans in the United States have been discussed almost entirely in terms of United States constitutional law, in parentheses, U.S. civil rights, rather than in the broader international legal framework of human and collective rights. However, important recent developments and perspectives raise new questions. In September 1992, look at these dates, September 1992, the United States ratified the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Please write that down, Google it, and download that document, brothers and sisters. It's called the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. The United States ratified that. You know what it means to ratify? I know Krista knows, but do you know what it means, brothers and sisters, when they ratify an international covenant? It means it becomes supreme law in the United States. They say right here, this covenant protects the right to self-determination. Bam! That's why all these lawyers decided to get together in 1993 at a university law school. All of these doctors of law decided to get together because the United States just ratified this covenant, making it the supreme law of the United States. And the number one thing it says, all peoples have the right of self-determination. By virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. Bear with me, brothers and sisters. I'm going to get to the part where they talk about paradigm shifting.
Okay, I'm scrolling just 1 second. All right, I'm going next. I'm assuming it's going to be the next highlighted.
No, it's going to be on page. So skip down to page 6. The second to last paragraph is highlighted on page 6. It says, if so, these are doctors of law speaking. If so, then our gathering here today is historic because it represents the first effort of African American and indeed American thinkers to free their minds from the intellectually crushing and oppressive paradigms that have served only to loop back toward the past. See, these paradigms we're stuck in, this civil rights paradigm, voting, marching, protesting, we're stuck. We're just looping back to the 60s, Comrade Chris. We're looping back to the 50s. We keep looping back. Assuring in relation to American pluralistic societal development, we shall continue to turn in purposeless circles around our strange attraction to various forms of enslavement and of servitude, domestication, and consequent materialism and dehumanization. These are doctors of law speaking, saying, look, Black people, if we keep engaging like this, we are no better than domesticated animals. Because that animal, that lion that was domesticated and now in a zoo, it used to be a ruler. Somebody came and captured that ruler, put it in a zoo, and now all the lions born after that ruler that's now domesticated in a zoo, they're automatically domesticated, so they don't even try to be a ruler anymore. That's Black people, and it's called dehumanization. Just like that lion has become de-lionized, is no longer a lion, we are no longer humans because we are being domesticated in a system that we are not the rulers of. Hope that makes sense. Let me read this again. Let me read the next paragraph. These are doctors of law talking. This is not Crystal Muhammad talking. This is not Ramzu Yunus talking. This is not Louis Farrakhan talking. These are doctors of law talking. Our attempt today is what they're saying to begin the process of reorienting intellectual thought around the right to self-determination is first of all an act toward intellectual liberation. First of all, brothers and sisters, we're being liberated tonight on this show, on this podcast, on this YouTube, on this Facebook. You're being intellectually liberated because no matter how much intellect you have, if you don't know about your right of self-determination, you don't know any solution. Your intellect is turning circles. And just like when I first heard about our right of self-determination, I said, I felt liberated. All that knowledge I thought I had, and I didn't know any solution. That's why I kept listening to speeches for a solution. Didn't know that I had a right to sit there and take control instead of listen to a speech and march. So look, you're being intellectually liberated. Let me continue. It says, and is an historical landmark, suggesting that we have finally broken free of the enslavement paradigms, the paradigm that Comrade Chris was talking about, and can now begin to contribute positively and meaningfully to African American freedom and absolutely, I'm gonna stop right there, to African American freedom. Now, unless you are certain, you can stop sharing, Comrade Crystal. Unless we are certain the right of self-determination, you can't contribute positively, brothers and sisters. You only can contribute to your further oppression. You, by marching and you only can legitimize the government. You only can further legitimize the government by voting. You can't contribute positively toward our liberation because that does not liberate us. That does not put us back in rulership. Do y'all understand? So that's an enslavement paradigm. So now it's a paradigm shift. 2024, there must be a paradigm shift, Comrade Crystal. There must be a shift. We can't continue that same circle of action. It's a circle. It's not a straight line. If you want to go to the grocery store, Comrade Crystal, are you going to circle your block trying to go to the grocery store to get you something to eat? No, you're not going to circle your block. You're going to starve to death if you keep circling your block. Right. You go in a straight line, wherever that line takes you, to that grocery store and get you something to eat. So, brothers and sisters, we can't keep circling the block for justice. We got to go towards the destination, liberation. The only way to get to that liberation.
Every time the brother goes hard, his screen locks up, but he's going to come back. He's going to come back. He's back. Go ahead, brother. Say that again.
Circling the block. We can't keep circling the block, brothers and sisters. We got to get to that destination. We got to get the liberation. It's 2024. 2024. Even on the international level, they're calling this the decade of Afro-descendants. This is the decade of Afro-descendants. So during this decade of Afro-descendants, can't we get liberation for Afro-descendants? Can't we get liberation? But we got to do something different, brothers and sisters. We got to do something different.
Now, the sister said we have to get off the hamster wheel.
Get off that hamster wheel. It's a hamster wheel.
That's right.
You can't rely on Joe Biden. You can't rely on Donald Trump. You can't rely on anybody in this. You can't even rely on Shaka Zulu if he came and ran for this government. Came back alive. You can't rely on this government, brothers and sisters. We have to have our own, and we have a right to have our own wherever we are, whether it be Detroit, whether it be Atlanta, whether it be in Jackson, Mississippi, whether it be in East Athens, Georgia, whether it be in Mayberry, wherever we are, we have a right to govern ourselves. Stand up, organize, create your own ballot. Go throughout Ferguson and ask everybody, do you want to be independent of that police force and government that killed Michael Brown? They would say yes. Do you want reparations, Ferguson? They would say yes. And everywhere we go, wherever city we are in, the people will say yes. It's up to us to organize that vote if we are organizing.
Now, what you talking about? Are you describing a plebiscite or something more than a plebiscite?
No, it's the same thing called plebiscite. I like to use the term referendum, but that term referendum and plebiscite is used interchangeably. But that's called a referendum, or some may call it a plebiscite. The people having a vote saying, look, we vote for independence. Right. They just had one also in Ukraine. Was it last year, the year before last? I think it was last year. They went parts of Ukraine. They went door to door with their vote, with their ballot, door to door, asking the people, do they want to be independent? The majority of the people said yes. So the soldiers took up and said, look, we control this. This is our right. And if you want to violate our right, that's what these guns for. That's what these guns for.
Right. So, a small example, but an example nonetheless, time been passing. About 15 years ago, the city of Houston had a multi-million-dollar contract. I think they said it was like $30 million contract with a company that was putting cameras all around the city, red light cameras. All around the city, and there was a group of attorneys who got together a petition to have, and they passed it. The city, by the way, passed this as a city ordinance to put these cameras out, right? So there was a group of attorneys who put together a petition and to have the cameras taken down, saying it was a violation of people's rights. You can't, if you go to court, you can't, confront a camera or whatever the legalese about it. But the bottom line is this petition went out, a referendum came out, and the referendum was the will of the people, and it trumped the city ordinance. And the city was like, well, we had a contract, we're going to lose $30 million, but it didn't matter because the people, it was the will of the people, and it overruled it. And so till today, Houston is one of only a few major cities that doesn't have cameras all around it. So that's not, in a new African people's self-determination way, but the exercise and the will of the people and how that trumps a local ordinance or a state ordinance is what we're talking about. So are we getting close to the time for you, brother?
I wait till they call it Don. They're reciting the Quran right now. Everybody, if you hear that noise, I'm in Egypt. They're reciting the Quran right now. Then they will call their Don for dawn prayer, actually. So I will rush out right quick and I'll come back after the prayer. But not now. I'm going to keep on speaking. Usually I would go now, just sit in the masjid. But right now, I'll just wait till it's time actually to pray. But like you said, Comrade Crystal, all people have power. When you say all power to the people, that means people have power. So if the people don't want what's happening to happen, then they can stop that themselves. They have to rely on the government official. Matter of fact, when you vote, that's all power to the people, because the people have a right to vote for the president. But in an international law, a people that never have exercised their right to govern themselves, which are black people, we have a right to self-determination. We can actually, even if we're not the majority, if we are the majority where we live, we might not be the majority. Some people may differ in that. We might not be the majority in America. But where I live, Detroit, black people are a majority. Atlanta, right. Black people are a majority. Baltimore, we are a majority. South side of Chicago, or whatever side of Chicago, we are the majority. So we have a right to take over that part and govern ourselves.
Let me ask you a question. Okay, so most cities, many cities, I know Houston, Dallas, and I'm not sure, even Atlanta, the city in and of itself comprises of a metroplex. Meaning there's a bunch of small towns that they annexed into the city. And like in Houston, we have a part of town called Sunnyside. And Sunnyside was the original black settlement, and they have their own mayor, but it's still a part of the city of Houston. Mm-hmm. So it's what you're telling me is that if the people in Sunnyside decide, hey, we don't want to be a part of the city of Houston anymore. We want this to be a black liberated zone.
Mm-hmm. That's that.
You know
they can do that.
They can do that. Okay, let me give you another example. Say you're in a city that doesn't have these metroplexes, but we go by just the side of towns, because whether people want to acknowledge it or not, America is segregated where we live.
Yeah, it is.
We're proving on every Sunday. They say Sunday at 10 a.m. is the most segregated hour in this nation. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Because people go to where they worship. And most of the time they're going to go worship in their community. We living in a segregated country. Of course, the majority of where people live, you got black neighborhoods, you got white neighborhoods, and you might have somebody that goes and integrate into these neighborhoods. So are you saying, comrade, that we wanted to just secure the black communities, and anywhere we have black people at, we create liberated zones that under the asserting our right of self-determination, this is what we should do?
That's exactly what we can do. And we saw a glimpse of that recently, brothers and sisters, on the college campuses when they were protesting. I know you probably saw it, Chris, when they were protesting about the genocide going on in Palestine. Harvard, all of these, even these major white universities, they created what's called liberated zones on campus. Liberated zones. Because that's actually a function of international law, of self-determination. If we can't get the whole city, we can get a part of the city. If it's a majority black, you can create a liberated zone. In Seattle, Washington, in 2020, during the George Floyd protests, those white folks created a liberated zone. They took over 6 or 7 blocks and ended up taking over the whole city. And the mayor even abdicated and gave them the city hall. So we have a right. We can create liberated zones if we're not the majority of the city. In our areas, it can be a liberated zone. That's the right of self-determination. They cannot lawfully deny that. In most of the cases, they didn't deny that. In Minneapolis, they created a small little liberated zone, liberated block. No police came on that liberated block.
I must admit, brother, you are really, really teaching me something. I'm talking about as far as, how my brain is moving. You can open up a can of worms. Talking about a paradigm shift.
You're a can of nuclear weapons.
Well, yeah. My point is,
I know
you can drop some.
Yeah.
Some jewels. Let's put it like that. We must use right language. You know what I'm saying? We don't want no can of worms unless we're going fishing. You know what I'm saying?
No, worms not powerful enough for somebody like you.
We might use to fertilize the garden. It doesn't matter. But the point about it is, I put it like this. So, let me see. I'm trying to make sure that we giving our get some of these. Comrade Devin West, she putting in a lot of messages. Comrade Malika, you giving us some powerful messages. Want to send y'all a shout out. D Harris, Shout out Shirley Baker. Shout out Ronald Hill. Shout out Brother Daniel. Shout out, yo, these human rights policy officers, they don't know. They don't know. This comrade says the World Bully Compound.
Oh, that's Comrade Carnell. Yeah, it's a bully, a pit bull compound.
Okay. Shout out Comrade Shay. Shout out. Man, I'm not trying to miss anybody, but we really appreciate the comments because y'all not popping sister what to say, soft light chick. You know what I'm saying? Y'all not giving no your comments are solid is what I'm getting at. You're not we even the comments, Sister Queen X, shout out. You know, these are no lightweight comments. And that is much respect, brothers and sisters. We appreciate not only you watching, but you participate because that's what this is about. You know, if you notice everything that the comrade has presented, we backed it up with documents. We must be intelligent in that manner. Talk about a paradigm shift. We got to move away from just letting people tell us something. Look at it. And then once you got it and you giving it, then what's your excuse? Because the first word in tonight's topic is asserting the right to self-determination. Asserting.
Man, we have to do something.
Yes.
The United Nations can assert it for us. The International Court of Justice can assert it for us. We have to assert that. They've already acknowledged that we have a right of self-determination. The government of the United States already acknowledged that we have a right of self-determination. I want to point out one thing, because when Joe Biden first became president, all these civil rights leaders was hooping and hollering and crying because he didn't address some of their wants or privileges or civil rights privileges that they wanted. So they hollered at Joe Biden, you didn't look out for us, Joe Biden. But let me tell you one thing Joe Biden did do. Joe Biden, now he's a devil now. Don't vote for him. Don't vote for none of these people. But one thing he did do, he signed something called the New Atlantic Charter. The New Atlantic Charter. In his first few months in office, the New Atlantic Charter, it was a commitment, a recommitment to the old Atlantic Charter. The old Atlantic Charter. What the old Atlantic Charter says, you look up Atlantic Charter. It was signed by the Prime Minister of the UK and the President of the United States back in around 19 something, way back in the day, 30 or 40, something around those days. Number 3 says, we wish to see self-government restored to those who have been forcibly denied. We wish to see these restored to those who have been forcibly denied. So here's the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of the UK signing a document saying they wish to see self-government, which is self-determination, restored to those people who have been forcibly denied. Who have been forcibly denied in America? Indigenous people and Afro-descendant or black people. We have been forcibly denied. So the president just signed us freedom papers when he first came into office. But those leaders were not looking for genuine liberation. They was looking for minority privileges. They don't want liberation. So that's who we have representing us in leadership, brothers and sisters. So it's up for people like Crystal Muhammad, leadership of our black organizations, Minister Louis Farrakhan, other leaders, Silas who has been qualifying it. We have to qualify what liberation is, because our people don't really know what liberation is and what to do. The followers don't. We have to qualify this. What does it mean by separation? Do I have to go off in the woods somewhere? No, we already separated. Don't know white folks living in those niggas in Detroit. Don't know white folks living in those niggas in Atlanta in the West Side. But they starting to take over all these areas. So we are already separated. But we have to separate by cutting the political band. Just like the settlers, the American founding fathers said in the Declaration of Independence. They said, look, we're going to separate, but not go anywhere. We're already separated from the British government. We're going to cut the political bands. That's a separation. Now we govern ourselves. So that's how we separate, brothers and sisters. You still can go off in the woods and buy some land and property if you want to. That's a good thing. But we already have an infrastructure in Atlanta. We already have an infrastructure in Detroit. We already have an infrastructure in Chicago, in these areas where black people live. And we already separated. So let's cut the political bind by saying we declare independence. And it's nothing that they can do. Here's the FOI as our military. Here's the new Black Panther Party as our military and police force to secure our self-determination. Here's the Black Liberation Army. Here's whatever group to secure. Here's New Era Detroit to secure us in Detroit for our liberation, for our self-determination. That's all we have to do, brothers and sisters. I know it's a huge paradigm shift. It's not what we're used to, but it's the conclusion that all peoples naturally come to. Even the founding fathers of America, they were protesting too. They were boycotting too. Then they came to the conclusion that you can't boycott. You can't protest an oppressor into being just. You can't do that. And that's the conclusion that Dr. King came to in 1967. He said, let's leave civil rights alone. Let's engage in human rights. Let's stop trying to reform this devil. Let's have a revolution against this devil and take black power. Martin Luther King started saying black power. Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Yes, he did. Then they killed that Dr. King, and now they present to us the Dr. King before he transformed. They give us the civil rights Dr. King. And now all of us who are activists, we want to be like the untransformed Dr. King, the ineffective Dr. King. We don't want to be like the Dr. King that had changed months before they assassinated him. So let's pick up the torch of Malcolm X. Let's pick up the torch of Dr. King. Let's follow the instructions of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, which Farrakhan revealed in 2018 that Elijah Muhammad said, have a vote. Let's carry on the torch of the Republic of New Africa, which said in 1968, let's have a vote. So let's organize our own vote, black people. And there are some black votes going on right now as well. So let's organize, let's get behind these votes, or let's organize one united ballot, and let's let the people make their choice. Let's let the people assert their self-determination by choosing black independence.
Now, how would the issue of reparations tie into asserting the right of self-determination?
First of all, if you look up, it's a document at the United Nations level, international level, called, not at their level, for everybody. It's called the Guidelines on the Principles of Reparations. That's the short term, but it's a longer title than that. It gives us guidelines on what reparations really is. And the first component of reparations is restoring the people back to their original condition. So first of all, the first act of reparations is restoring black people back to self-government. That's the first part of reparations. Now on down the line is compensation, monetary compensation. But monetary compensation is not reparation. First part of repairing the people is putting them back in self-government. And now once you have self-government, you are the government. You control reparations. Now you got $15 trillion of real estate value alone. If you're in a place like Detroit, and that's real estate value. That's not geographical value. Geographical value is way larger than real estate value. For instance, Detroit has probably over $70 trillion in geographical value because of fresh water. Detroit alone can repair and make everybody millionaires. Black people.
Now, what do you mean by that geographical value?
Meaning the land value of the land, of the territory, of the position on the globe. That's geographical value. Detroit has fresh water, the largest freshwater source on the earth.
And it's water right there up into Canada, right?
Yeah, that Great Lakes. So they have a right to do that. I'm going to rush right quick. The brother has to step out to prayer. We're gonna have him give him that time and that respect. And I want to I invited one of the comrades to come on. I thought she came into the studio already. So let me come on back here and just bring it back to me. So tonight, brothers and sisters, we just heard from Brother Ramzu Yunus, a human rights policy officer, who has laid down a discussion and a pathway towards liberation that I don't think many of us have even fathomed. I'm going to be quite honest. Even in the new Black Panther Party, we say, and that's part of what we want, but what we want, what the 10-point platform wants, what our non-local objectives are, but having a practical venue and platform to move out on, I think is very key. Now, nobody can deny that the new Black Panther Party has not been on the front lines as far as it relates to demonstrating. We've had armed and non-armed demonstration, asserting our rights to bearing arms, but not in a
a vein of just trying to showboat weapons, but only in a manner of defending the people and defending the rights of the people. If you would notice in the history of the new Black Panther Party, whenever you saw us with arms, there was a gross violation of human rights. And we came out into a territory that we knew we had an aggressive combatant. An aggressive combatant. But brothers and sisters, 99% of the people that call themselves so-called leaders, the only thing that they're going to present to you to have as a solution to dealing with an open enemy is voting. And we have laid out to you very clearly how your participation in this system validates an oppressive system. You saying that you want these people who families are known families of previous slave owners of our ancestors, whose policies are known to be racist, oppressive, and criminal to our people. Are we going to forget the policies that Joe Biden put into office with the 3 strikes rule and the policies that locked up our people in droves in the 1980s and 90s and 2000s? Whereas in the 1970s, the prison industrial complex only had about 300,000 prisoners, and now there's over 3,300,000 prisoners because of the policies and the laws that have been put in place as it relates to the so-called war on drugs, which is really a war of them flooding our communities with chemicals of drugs and at the same time, disease. It was no coincidence that AIDS and crack showed up at the same time. It was no coincidence that many of our Black leaders who were out and were organizing for Black power and who were organizing for self-determination are the only political prisoners that we have here in this country. The majority of the political prisoners in this country are Black liberation freedom fighters of the Black Panther Party. You will find no civil rights political prisoner because they were pushing forth the agenda of assimilation and integration. Even though they might not have had that intention, they may have been moving, and I believe many of our people during the civil rights movement were moving out with best intentions. But had they known a different way, we're not gonna, just, crap on our elders or anything like that. Because you know what? Yeah, we don't imagine if we were still living in a time where they were saying you can't go here and you can't go there. So many of the things that they did do a sacrifice for were for our benefit, but that wasn't enough. We can't just be satisfied with a 1 level on the first floor in kindergarten when we're supposed to be at the top of the pyramid, miles high. We can't keep doing the tactics and using the same language and deferring back to the policies that have been presented to us that have given us no remedy. We have been voting and voting and voting. But when will we start revolting? Revolting against a system that is criminal, a system that treats us inhumane, a system that sends their race soldiers prowling into our communities as insurgents, as slave catchers for a capital benefit. I live in Houston, Texas, Harris County, which has the largest prison industrial complex on planet Earth. Our downtown court system is a skyrise. The county court is a 20-story skyrise with 10 courts on each floor. That's 200 courts. And you be going in front of Harris County Monday through Friday at 8 a.m., you will see a line wrapped around the corner of people that look like me and my son, or rest in peace, Kevin, my son. Our children, our brothers and sisters. I'm talking about Black people. Then next you'll see the brown. And every now and then you'll see the sprinkle of the others. But the majority of the people look like us. And that's duplicated everywhere in this country. And who's riding around snatching out people off the street? For laws of for crimes of the majority of time of poverty. Crimes of poverty. How many times was somebody with a pocket full of money and everything provided to them go around, I'm talking about our people, go around and take from somebody? Most of the time not. So our behaviors of us being self-destructive amongst each other are all vestiges of Black inferiority complex and being subjugated to a people who mean us no well, and a reality where we're not self-governed and self-determined. Who has pride? Just put it in the chat. Which one of you would have pride in going to our oppressor and asking them for a job? I say nobody. It's in fact humiliating. It's humiliating to have to go and ask these white folks for a job. Let's keep it 100. To have to go and sit in front of somebody probably half your age or somebody that looks just like you and ask them for a job and change how you're talking. Hi, good day. I'm Crystal Sonia. I would like a job today. That's embarrassing. It's humiliating. It's humiliating that we keep sending our children to our oppressors for a job. It's humiliating that we keep sending our children to our oppressors to educate them. And we wonder why they come back so angry when they went to school for 8 hours and learned nothing about themselves. Went to school for 8 hours to only learn about those people who oppressed us. And you wonder why we have such rage towards one another. Well, guess what? We can fix that. We can fix all of these issues by asserting our right for self-determination, by asserting our rights of having our own school systems. In these days and times, we can even have things virtually. We got enough schools of African-centered education where even if we, came together, let's think about this. Even if we identify a few schools that have African-centered education, and even if we still have to go to work, and we came together, just picture this. Talk about a paradigm shift. Picture if you just took your neighborhood, everybody in your neighborhood going to the same school anyway, right? What if you had a community meeting, right? And you say, hey, we know some of y'all might have to go to the plantation. Some of you may be self-sufficient. Why don't we take, about 10 houses or find a location, and those who have the time and are able to proctor or proxy would monitor the students, but we have a digital educational system where all the students have laptops, and we got somebody that comes and teaches a curriculum, and we fund it. No excuses. What if we come together and have at the same meeting and we find out what business do you do, brothers and brother or sister? How can we be a part of supporting your business so you can hire more people? Why don't we come together and find out, especially in these days of, right now, we're able to do a broadcast from the comfort of our own homes. It goes across globally. What if we were to sit down and think about businesses that we can operate straight from our laptops and make it available to where other brothers and sisters could do it? It can be done. What if we identified those properties in our communities that are eyesores, and we collectively put our monies together and got those properties and made it affordable housing? But before we made it affordable housing, we got our brothers and sisters to go out and clean the property up and fix it. We can do that. What if we get together and say, Third Ward, Houston, Third Ward is majority Black. We don't like the way we being treated. We don't want the police in our community. We decided that third ward is going to be our own black, liberated zone, whatever name we want to call it. We could do that. We might call it emancipation. Emancipation, they named the street. Let's go past, just having a street named after us, brothers and sisters, which is important. But that's not enough. Let's go for the gusto. On our watch, let's provide a new reality for the next generation that come before us. Do y'all mean to tell us that on our watch, we're going to sit there and allow police brutality to go to the next generation? On our watch, we're not going to get out there and push the issue of reparations and self-determination? Ain't no more excuses about what went on and what didn't work right in the civil rights integration, or what didn't go right, or what's happening to us. Time out for these excuses. We must be self-determined. We must identify what the problems are and come up with the solution and be the ones to make it happen. And I guarantee we start city by city. This will become the norm. This will become the norm. Let's get our heads together, brothers and sisters. Yes, that's right, sister. Free all the political prisoners. Free them all. But this is not unfathomable. This is not something that we cannot do. We can. We doing it anyway. We give our time and energy to this system. We are basically volunteer indigent servants. That's what's going on. They're not forcing it on us. We volunteer and go to them. We the ones that go to them asking them to do for us when we can really do for ourselves. Name somebody. Put it in a chat. Name something that we don't already have domination over. When you walk, I guarantee you walk into any building in this country, what's the first thing you're going to see when you walk in? Somebody put in the chat. You're going to see a black woman or a black man at that front desk asking, where are you going? You know why? Because our enemies know to make that's the first buffer zone before you get to them. Why is it that when you go to the airport, no matter what airport you go to in America, why is it the people checking you, the TSA people with the stinking attitudes, why is it that the majority of them are black? Have anybody noticed that? And some, why is it that that's because this humiliating experience that you're going to go through, it's going to be done by somebody black that's going to have that taste in your mouth, that bad taste in your mouth, or somebody basically molesting you, patting you down. I don't know if they do that to y'all, but they do that to me. I feel violated. I have a problem with that. Why is it that when you go into any courthouse in this country, as soon as you get to the courthouse, most of the time right there checking you in, patting you down with the stinking attitude is going to be somebody black? It's social engineering. It's social engineering. They have the first layer of somebody who is just as oppressed, doing humiliating things to you. Brothers and sisters, we will, not just can, we will be the change affecting the way things are. This is literally on our watch. Everybody got a part in this. And if you don't participate in it, you're a part of the problem. I'm just going to put it right there, just keeping it 100. You don't have to join the new Black Panther Party. And if you do want to join the new Black Panther Party, we want to make sure that you come with the right mind state. The majority of the time, we have political education classes and we train. When it's a call to action, we hit the ground. We don't sit there and ask for no money from McDonald's or no George Soros or no corporation. We put our own money together and we make sure that we get down and do what we got to do. But how long can we keep doing that without the support of our community? There's not been a call to action that takes place and you don't see us down there on the ground. Ferguson, Baltimore, Minneapolis. We were right there on the ground. Go back and check the record. Go back there and check the record. But brothers and sisters, we have to support organizations, programs of brothers and sisters who are sincere. We need more people to step to the plate. It doesn't matter what your background is. Hell, you can be a doctor, a lawyer. You might not even know what you want to do. You could be brand new, 20 years old, trying to figure your way out. We'll train you in all kind of things and let you make a decision from there. But if you do have a specialty, why not bring that specialty to the table? Why not bring that specialty to the table and use it towards our benefit? And when I'm saying I'm talking about black people. Make no mistake about it. I'm not talking about kumbaya and we want everybody else in. Self-determination. Everybody knows that automatically black people are so giving and lovely to everybody else. That's automatic. But we talking about, that's right, we have every profession we need. That's right, Sister Shirley. We've been the teachers. You know, I would love to go into a black hospital. I've only heard about that. I've only heard about when we had black hospitals. I've only heard about when we had all black strips like Tulsa. Those type of economic zones existed all across this country. And you know what happened? By economic and social design and the act of war, the United States government ran highways through most of the black economic zones. In New Orleans, where my hometown is, they ran I-10 straight through the black economic zone. And then they turned around and painted pictures and images. This was not a coincidence. In Fort Worth, right outside of Fort Worth, they found a town, a black town that was underwater. They purposely blew the lake and the river and made a lake form over and flood out this black township. This is what was by design. Rosewood, Tulsa, Wilmington, all of these acts of war took place when people were determining and exercising their rights of self-determination. Now, will we come against opposition? Of course. But hell, we live under constant opposition. We live under constant opposition. I'm going to go back to I was talking about this courthouse, this 20-story courthouse. The majority of the judges there are white. They give different time for black people than they do for white people. When the white person goes in there under the fence, the majority of the time they'll give them the option of a pretrial diversion, meaning they'll give them probation, like a pre-probation. And if they go through this pre-probation, they get a hand slap, they walk away, it's not on their record. They don't do that to the majority of black people that go in there. They try to give them the maximum time. And and if you got a good case where you can prove or evidence shows that you're innocent, they'll reset you and reset you and reset you, hoping you'll miss a court date. Reset you, and reset you till you're tired of coming to court and you just decide to take a plea. Now you got a jacket on you. But how did you get there in the first place? By these slave patrollers riding through our communities. There should be no reason to call the police. Even if somebody got hurt, we need to be having, conflict resolution folks within our own communities that go and deal with these issues. I used to work for a black-owned bail bond company. And the majority, do y'all know that the majority of the cases that came in that were involved our people, they were not violent crimes. The majority would be crimes of poverty, maybe possession of something. Maybe possession of something was the majority of the time. Then we would have assault. We get kind of angry. But how about we have conflict resolution to deal with these matters? When we have our own communities, are we going to duplicate and have our own neighborhoods and duplicate the ways, or not neighborhoods, our own liberated self-determination zones and duplicate the ways of our oppressor and turn around and be the black police? Or are we going to come up with ways where, instead of us paying taxes, the revenues that are coming into our communities, we give back? How are these liberated zones going to look? Welcome back, brother Ramzu. But in this time that you were gone, I wanted us to I've been talking about how are these liberated zones look, and us going ahead and just exercising what we're talking about, making it happen. We talk about this right here on the show, but I want to also say, when we are strategizing, we giving you overview. But when you start actually strategizing to pull these things off, do it behind closed doors. We give you an overview of what must be done. But we actually start strategizing and implementing and putting things together. Find out a way of getting information and keeping it internal. Do you agree or disagree, Brother Ramzu, Black Power?
Salute. I don't know if I'm on the screen or not.
Oh, Lord. Hold on. Let me see. There you go.
All right. Yeah. Salute everybody back. Yes, definitely we got to have a degree of secrecy while we're planning and developing a plan for implementation. Of course, the implementation has to be open because it's an open vote and open declaration of independence that we are declaring. But it's imperative that our people do begin organizing, getting together in secret, forming your committee and putting together the plans, which the steps are simple. Like, we even had a document that we published called The Steps Towards Self-Determination. And number one, like you said, is getting together in secret, planning out what you're going to do, putting together a temporary governing council. Then after you put together that council, now begin your campaigning to the people. Go and let the people know what's the benefits of self-determination. Like, for instance, in Detroit, we let the people know that, look, all of these empty properties, they're yours for free. That's a new policy. A new policy is you will be taken out of poverty because we're going to leverage city assets and give everybody reparations, but it will be within our own economic system. So you won't just spend that money. Now, of course, everybody would agree. So you campaign, let the people know what's the benefits of this revolution that we're engaged in, this nonviolent self-determination revolution. So the people will agree. So after you campaign, say, okay, we campaign, now we're holding a vote on this day. Or you can have an assembly vote. You can go door to door like they just did in Ukraine. Then you have the vote. Now, once people say yes, you just start running the show. Just like when you vote for a mayor or whoever you vote for, they begin just running the show. So after people vote and say yes, we just begin running the show. We don't destroy, especially if you already have a city system together. We don't destroy the system. We just take over and begin governing ourselves. And it's not that hard work. Matter of fact, most people that are in congressmen, mayors, they started somewhere. They were not politicians. They just began being the mayors. You see people go from being a school teacher to a mayor. I've seen in one country, the guy went from being a bus driver to the president. So you don't have to have experience, because really systems already run themselves. Atlanta's already running. Houston is already running. The mayor's not sitting there controlling traffic and all this type of stuff. He's just there in place to make policies or make sure policies are protected, et cetera, and to manage the place. So we can manage what's already going on with new policies that's beneficial to us. So it's not that difficult.
Wow. You said a mouthful, and just those few things. It's already in place. Not only is it already in place, we the ones built it.
Yeah, and we run most of the times we're running it.
Yes. We the ones built this whole country for free, forced.
Yeah, because many times, Comrade Chris, people think destruction. When we talk about taking over, destruction. If you look back in history, many governments, they didn't destroy the government. I lived in Zimbabwe. That's basically where I grew up into my adulthood in Zimbabwe. When they had a revolution against the government, they didn't destroy the government. They just took over. Now it's their government. It already has a structure in place. Of course, you're going to change some policies to make them beneficial, make them more social for the people. Of course, you're going to do that. But the government is already running. The electricity system, the grid is already there. We just now control the switch to that grid.
Right.
The water system is already there. We already have hospitals. Now we run those hospitals. And now the public health is free for real now. So all of those things are already in place. Factories are there. We control the factories. Now we can actually put some factories in place where we produce everything that we need. So all of those things are already there. There's nothing really new to be done besides a new dispensation, as they would call it. Now we have new policies and new people running the show.
Wow. You said something, you said a non-violent, peaceful revolution. Wow.
Yeah, see, all revolutions were really intent non-violent. Nobody wants you can't just go out and say, okay, I'm going to shoot up the enemy and take over. No, first you go through, what's the internationally accepted procedures, for instance, for Black people? The internationally accepted procedure is, first of all, we hold the vote amongst Black people. Do you want to be independent? Now, the people say yes. Now we assert that independent. We start running the show. We give them notice. Look, we have voted. We control Detroit right now. We run the housing situation in Detroit. So we start running the housing situation. We start create our housing department and give people free housing. No more paying for housing, etc. We control the police. Says, police, stand down. You have been disbanded. Here's our new police force. Now we begin running. Now, if they forcibly deny it, according to international law, if they try to stop you from asserting what you have a right to assert, now you can get violent. If they try to get violent and stop you physically from asserting that. Otherwise, we don't have a right to just go out there and start shooting up stuff. What are you shooting up stuff for? What are you trying to do?
Yeah, that's
right. Something and they tried to stop you. So in international law, the only way we're justified in becoming violent is if they try to stop us from ruling and governing ourselves.
And let's be clear. I was not trying to say justifying being violent, but I wanted to get into that this understanding because when we people have for some reason, and not for some reason, what did you mention earlier? Controlled opposition through the miseducation of forces of controlled opposition. They have put a bad stigma on militants, and also they've given an overstanding like those of us that are liberation or freedom fighters that we are violent, and we've never done anything violent. You know what I'm saying? We've stood up and spoke about the violence of murder and genocide from the police. We have never been the aggressor. I guarantee if we knew we were the aggressor, I wouldn't be sitting on this call right now.
Like the original Black Panther Party, what did they say? And still the new Black Panther Party, for self-defense.
That's right.
Let's get self-defense. It's for your opposition. You being violent towards us. Somebody has to defend you being violent, you oppressor being violent. So that's what these so-called militant organizations, not to be the aggressor, but to defend against the aggressor or the forcible denier, which the oppressors are always forcible deniers. So you need that group there to take that militant stance, not to be the aggressor, but stance and look.
His mic froze up.
These guns will be used. If you see, in fact, them formations, it's to be these guns will be used. So you just assert your right, and if they deny it and try to forcibly do anything, now you have the right to do whatever. You have the right to be men and be women, be human beings.
And our enemy does that every day. If you go into a courtroom, yes, the judge is sitting there making rules and making rulings and looking into stuff, but he is backed by a bailiff on this side and a bailiff on that side with two guns on each hip. That's the only reason why you listen to that judge. Same way. So when you see brothers and sisters coming around and are providing protection, understand that. And also I want people to understand and be clear. The new Black Panther Party, I want to make this point. Off topic, but on topic. We are not security guards. We are freedom fighters. And that is a big difference.
Teach.
We have ministries of defense. We have
Teach.
ministries of education.
Mm-hmm.
We have ministries of health, ministries of economics. We are trained in all aspects. So I was saying before you came on, some of our brothers and sisters already have a talent or a skill set that they already bring to the table. And we want you to work that lane in our own nation that you've been trained in, that you decided to get skilled in, and bring that to the table in a self-determined way. Not just allow our enemy to use up all of your talent. And by the time you retire, you too tired to do anything for your people. Some of our people, maybe the youngsters, they don't know which way to go. We might even have some adults that don't know which way to go. But when you come around and around brothers and sisters like myself and Brother Ramzu, you're going to get learned in many thoughts, many schools, I should say, many venues, avenues, and then you can make that determination. We are cross-trained. Tell them, brother. You know, sometimes we have to be the information, the defense, the health, the education. That's just the way it is, and being a part of the movement.
Yeah, and some nations that do the same thing, Conrad. Some whole nations governing people with $1 trillion, billion-dollar budgets. You have a minister, he'd be the minister of information and the minister of health, etc. You know, but we have enough qualifications amongst us. Look at all of the things we are running in the United States. We have the qualifications amongst us to run it ourselves. A lot of us are also afraid, not afraid of what the enemy can do to us, but we are afraid of the unknown. What does, like you said earlier, what does it look like? So we don't know what it looks like. So we're afraid. Okay, how does governing ourselves look like? Will it be chaotic? Will people be getting sick? We can't take care of them, et cetera, et cetera. We have all of these worries because we don't know what it looks like. So we paint a picture of what it looks like. It looks basically like it already looks, but it will be 20,000 times better. And it will be free. And it will be sustainable. We'll change it over to being sustainable because things can be sustainable. Matter of fact, even now they have enough technology where nobody on earth has to work, actually. I used to think, well, there'll be limited work. Maybe some people have to do the farming and plant the seeds. No, they have tractors that will plant the seeds for you, harvest it for you, and everything else for you. So now they have robots that cut the grass for you. So now you can't even, you have to cut your own grass. So there's a lot of things that's sustainable. Now in 2024, the technology is there. It's just our mindset of being liberated to utilize that technology is not there. And that's our purpose, is to get our mindset, put our mindset there. Let's move forward. Let's escape that paradigm. Stop looping back to 50, 60 years ago, doing what they already did. Let's do something new. Let's do what all progressive movements have done. There's one document I often share from this professor out of Georgia State University. I didn't give you that document, but she says the name of her publication is called All Peoples Have the Right of Self-Determination, Henry J. Richardson III's Liberatory Perspective on Racial Justice. This is a professor of law out of Georgia State University. And she asked a question at the end of her document: what will it take? What will it take for us to move forward and actually gain liberation? What will it take? And she said, the main thing it takes is for us to develop a new framework. Stop framing our struggle in terms of civil rights. Stop framing our struggles looking for equality, when there's no such thing as equality when you are a minority. If you want equality, we're getting equality. If they are the majority in this system, then that means you don't have any equality. And that's exactly what we're getting. So we're looking for things that are scientifically, mathematically impossible. It's impossible to be treated equal if you're 15% of the population. It's impossible.
Yeah.
So let's stop looking for the impossible and look for the possibilities. There's a possibility for us to assert our right of self-determination where we are the majority. Where we are the majority. Now we get what we want as a majority.
That's right. And Brother Ramzu, the map, I say this all the time. I'm just going to use a round number. Say it's 300 elected officials in Congress. Out of 300, we may got 40 in there. That other 260, it doesn't matter if it's 2024 or 2084, they were always our voters.
Teach.
So what? It doesn't matter.
Teach.
So what does matter is, are we going to be foolish enough to keep passing on this Santa Claus, Easter Bunny fantasy way of doing politics and dealing with ourselves and dealing with our people. When you brought up one of the same points that I was bringing about when you left, when we getting together to set together our communities, we need to be identifying industries and things that we can do to provide for ourselves that don't require brick and mortar. That we can maybe operate from or bring revenue to our people from the phone or the laptop. We have enough brilliant minds to come up with these concepts. Well, brother, it is 9:07. I do want to thank everyone who's come in. And what we'll do, we're going to come back and I'm going to invite you at any time that you want to come back to present or bring in information. You have an open invitation, Brother Ramzu. Please understand. But I also want to invite you to come on and do some political education towards our comrades. I got to say, I must give credit where credit is due. Your girl, the queen, Sister Tamiko, she been on me and on me and on me about making sure that we talk with you and have you on. But also, that was on the radio show, but also for the party members to participate in this human rights courses. And I gotta say, I'm sold. I must say, I'm sold. Black Power. Because just keep it real, bro. Brothers and sisters. If we want to see this happen, and we do, just like we had Minister Robert Abdul Halim Muhammad, he changed his name. Just like we had Abdul Halim Muhammad on yesterday, and he was talking about Operation Unity. If there is something that the human rights policy officers are bringing to the table that can benefit our people, why not look at it, engage, and support it? In our manual, one of the 9 local objectives, the first thing it says is we want a Black Power movement. This is part of the Black Power movement. We should be intelligent enough to know when something has been presented to us that's going to benefit us, that we give credit where credit is due, and sit and learn. And not only learn, participate and make something happen from it. I take this brother's taking this time to come on this show very seriously. I don't know what time he's in Egypt right now. I mean, you're not gonna find Brother Ramzu on CNN. They will be afraid to present this to the American masses and have their black people who they've held under their foot know that there's another way. But we're not afraid. In fact, as I said at the beginning, we're proud and honored to have had and been able to have our brother here to present. Black Power, salute to you, brother. Brother Emmanuel, I saw you in the chat. We're gonna bring you on. We're gonna bring you on the next time, Brother Emmanuel. Look at my brother. I love Brother Emmanuel. I want to come in. That's all right, brother, man. We're gonna catch you on the rebound. Yeah, our sister Ophelia says doing the same thing over and expecting different results. Insanity. The Angel Network. I just don't want to let everybody that's shouted out. I want to make sure you got a chance to be represented because you took your time. Who else? Oh, Shirley Baker, you've been on. Yeah, so Black Power, brothers and sisters, make sure that you support this program. Make sure you share this program. If you heard anything on here that you think is for our people, share it. And I know you heard at least 2 hours and 10 minutes of information that's going to be beneficial for our people. Ain't no shame in my game. You have not, if you ask not. This broadcast is not free. We pay for this streaming service. We pay for the radio broadcast. We pay for the websites. We're volunteer freedom fighters. So support the new Black Panther Party. Go to Cash App and give us a link. Give us a donation. It doesn't matter what you got. $5 or $500, $5,000. We're not turning it down. If you've heard something that strikes you and you want to join the new Black Panther Party, come on board. www.nbpp.org. But I'm going to warn you now, It's a coon-free zone. No cooning, no buffooning. We won't have it. If you want to find out more about how to get involved with Brother Ramzu and the human rights policy officers, we're gonna tell you. We're gonna tell you straight to go straight to the horse out the horse's mouth. So, brother, how he's gonna say it now, and then we'll put it in the description. But if anyone wants to be a policy officer, I'm gonna put it in the chat down here. How do they get in contact with your was it a formation? It's how do we
So that
okay. How do folks get involved in
we have a hotline, human rights hotline, 888-999.
Human rights hotline. Okay, I'm ready. 888.
999. 6530.
Wow, I should have had this up a long time ago. That's all right. We working it out. 888-999-6530.
Yes, ma'am.
That's hot. Okay, so let's hit it. This is how you get involved with the human rights policy officers. 888-999-6530. I'm gonna let that scroll until this broadcast ends. Brother, go ahead and give us some closing words, please.
All right. Then first of all, thanks.
Or marching orders, however you want to do it.
Thanks to everybody for listening. This is a extraordinary program. This is the extraordinary conversation that we're having. This is not the ordinary conversation. Sister Crystal could be hosting a podcast talking about voting, etc., but she's not. She's talking about something extra, out of the ordinary. And that's something that we don't know about. It's called our right of self-determination. So please, let's look further into exploring that right of self-determination and uniting with us so that we can actualize and assert that right of self-determination. You're welcome to listen further, get in touch with us. But even if you don't join on with human rights policy officers or Comrade Crystal, we're still one if you are asserting the right of self-determination for Black people. So continue to learn, be sincere, and let's move forward. Extraordinary conversation, extraordinary actions, automatically, mathematically, scientifically will equal an extraordinary result. So let's deal with the extraordinary, brothers and sisters. Love you all. Thanks for listening. Salute.
Black power. And let's not forget, we're extraordinary people. Ain't nobody been through what we've been through.
Indeed.
And look at us now. Come on. Look at us now. Black power. Let's make the ancestors proud, brothers and sisters. It's on our watch. Black power.